In just 37 seconds, one of Hollywood's most beloved actors went from friendly guest to absolutely furious, launching into a blistering takedown of his host that left the studio audience in complete shock. What started as light conversation about movies quickly spiraled into one of the most heated confrontations in late-night television history, with Nicolas Cage ultimately storming off the set after being pushed too far by Stephen Colbert's relentless jabs. The tension was there from the very first handshake. As Nicolas Cage walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause, clearly excited to see the iconic actor. But something felt different tonight. Colbert's greeting seemed colder than usual, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Cage sat down, adjusted his jacket, and prepared for what he thought would be a conversation about his latest film project. He had no idea what was coming. Colbert wasted no time. "Nicolas, great to have you here," he said, his tone already carrying an edge. "I've been dying to ask you about your movie choices over the years. I mean, you've been in some real gems. And then there's the other 90% of your filmography." The audience laughed nervously. Cage's expression shifted slightly, his jaw tightening, but he maintained his composure. "Well, Stephen, I've always believed in taking risks," Cage responded carefully. "Not every film is going to be a masterpiece, but I'd rather be out there creating than sitting behind a desk making fun of people who actually do the work." The audience went quiet. Colbert's eyes narrowed. "Oh, that's rich coming from someone who starred in Left Behind," Colbert shot back, leaning forward in his chair. "I mean, what was that? Were you trying to warn us about your career trajectory?" More uncomfortable laughter rippled through the crowd. Cage shifted in his seat, clearly irritated but still trying to keep things civil. "You know what? I'm proud of that film," Cage said, his voice firm. "It had a message, and millions of people connected with it. But I wouldn't expect someone who spends their nights reading jokes written by a team of people to understand what it's like to actually put yourself on the line creatively." The energy in the room changed instantly. Colbert's smile vanished. "Wow, okay," Colbert said, sitting back with exaggerated surprise. "I guess we're doing this now. Let me ask you something, Nicolas. How many of those direct-to-video movies were you actually present for? Because I've seen some of them, and it looks like you phoned in the performance from a different continent." The audience gasped. This was crossing a line, and everyone knew it. Cage's face flushed red. "At least, I'm doing something real," he fired back. "You sit here night after night with your smug attitude, acting like you're better than everyone else. You mock actors, politicians, anyone who dares to have a different opinion than you. When was the last time you actually created something original instead of just tearing other people down?" Colbert laughed, but it was cold and harsh. "Created something original? Have you seen the Wicker Man remake? Because I'd argue that murdering a classic film counts as destruction, not creation." The audience was split now, some laughing, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "That's real cute, Stephen," Cage said, his voice rising. "You want to talk about my work? Let's talk about yours. You're nothing but a puppet. You read whatever your producers tell you to read. You push whatever agenda your network wants you to push. At least I have the guts to take chances and fail on my own terms." The commercial break couldn't come fast enough. But Colbert wasn't backing down. "We'll be right back with more from Nicolas Cage," he announced with a smile that looked more like a snarl. "Assuming he doesn't need to leave early to film Ghost Rider 3. Revenge of the direct-to-DVD release." The audience didn't know whether to laugh or remain silent. During the break, crew members could be seen trying to calm both men down, but neither was having it. Cage stood up from his chair, pacing near the desk, his hands gesturing wildly as he spoke to someone off camera. Colbert sat rigid in his seat, whispering intensely to a producer. When the cameras came back on, the atmosphere was electric with hostility. "Welcome back," Colbert said, barely looking at his guest. "Nicolas, before the break you were telling us how brave you are for making terrible movies. I'm curious, is there a specific method to your madness? Or do you just say yes to everything that comes across your desk because you bought too many castles?" That was it. That was the moment everything exploded. Cage's face went from red to nearly purple. "You want to talk about my finances?" he shouted, no longer caring about maintaining composure. "That's really where you want to go? You smug piece of work. I've forgotten more about acting than you'll ever know about anything. You're a talk show host, Stephen. That's it. You're not important. You're not brave. You're just mean." The audience was completely silent now. Even Colbert seemed momentarily stunned by the raw anger in Cage's voice. But he recovered quickly, and his response was calculated to hurt. "At least, I'm self-aware enough to know what I am," he said coolly. "Can you say the same? Or are you still pretending that Season of the Witch was misunderstood art?" Cage stood up abruptly, his chair nearly tipping backward. "You know what? Screw this," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "I came here to talk about my work, to have a conversation, and instead you've spent the entire time trying to humiliate me. This is what's wrong with you, Stephen. This is what's wrong with this whole damn show. You don't want to talk to people. You want to destroy them." Colbert stood too, facing Cage across the desk. "Maybe if you made better movies, I'd have better things to say," he shot back. The two men stared at each other, the tension so thick it felt like the air itself might crack. Cage leaned forward, his hands pressed flat on the desk. "You think you're funny, don't you? You think this is entertainment? Tearing someone down on national television because you know they can't really fight back without looking like the bad guy? That's coward behavior, Stephen. That's what cowards do." The audience was frozen. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were recording on their phones, knowing they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years. Colbert's face hardened even more, and when he spoke, his voice was ice cold. "A coward? That's what you're calling me? I'm not the one who took a paycheck to be in a movie where I punched a woman while wearing a bear suit. Want to explain that artistic choice to everyone?" Cage's fist slammed down on the desk, making the coffee mugs jump. "That scene was taken out of context, and you damn well know it," he shouted. "But that's what you do, isn't it? You take things out of context, you twist them, you manipulate them to get your laugh. You don't care who you hurt as long as you get your applause." "Oh, please," Colbert scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. "Don't act like you're some victim here, Nicholas. You've made a fortune doing whatever the hell you want. If people make fun of you for it, that's the price of fame. Grow up." "Grow up?" Cage repeated, his voice getting louder with each word. "Grow up? I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've won an Oscar. I've worked with the best directors in the world. And you're telling me to grow up? You're a glorified comedian reading from a teleprompter, telling me how to handle my career." Colbert moved around the desk now, getting closer to Cage, his body language aggressive. "Yeah, I am," he said sharply. "Because someone needs to. You've become a joke, Nicholas. A meme. People don't respect your work anymore. They laugh at it. And instead of taking responsibility for the garbage you've put out there, you want to blame everyone else." The words hit Cage like physical blows. His breathing was heavy, his face contorted with anger and something else, something that looked like genuine hurt. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said, his voice shaking. "You have no idea what it's like to risk everything for your art. I've taken roles that other actors wouldn't touch because I believed in the stories. I've experimented, I've failed, I've succeeded, I've lived as an artist. What have you done? Tell jokes someone else wrote? At least my jokes land better than your performances," Colbert snapped back. "When's the last time someone left one of your movies feeling anything other than confused or disappointed? National Treasure 3 isn't happening because even Disney thinks you're box office poison now. That crossed a serious line." Cage's hands were shaking now, clenched into fists at his sides. "You son of a bitch," he said quietly, but with unmistakable venom. "You don't get to talk about my relationship with studios. You don't get to pretend you know anything about the business side of this industry. You're a talking head. That's all you are. A talking head with an audience that claps because a sign tells them to." Colbert laughed bitterly. "And yet, here you are. On my show. Because you need the publicity. Funny how that works, isn't it? If I'm so terrible, why did you agree to come here?" "Because I thought you had some shred of decency left," Cage shot back. "I thought maybe, just maybe, we could have an actual conversation. But no, you had to go for the cheap shots. You had to go for the humiliation. That's all you know how to do." The host crossed his arms, his expression mocking. "If you can't handle a little criticism, maybe you should stick to movies nobody watches." "Oh wait, that's already what you're doing." The audience gasped again. This was brutal. This was beyond anything anyone had seen on late-night television before. Cage took a step closer to Colbert, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm warning you, Stephen. Stop. Just stop talking." "Or what?" Colbert challenged, not backing down an inch. "What are you going to do, Nicholas? Are you going to have a meltdown? Are you going to give us a real-life Nicolas Cage freak-out moment? Because I've got to tell you, that might actually be more entertaining than your last 10 movies combined." The insult hung in the air like poison. Cage's entire body was trembling with rage. "You really want to do this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You really want to push me this far?" "I'm just asking questions," Colbert said with fake innocence. "Isn't that my job? To ask the tough questions? Or should I just kiss your ass like every other interviewer and pretend Prisoners of the Ghostland was anything other than unwatchable?" Cage's control finally snapped completely. "That's it," he roared, his voice echoing through the studio. "I'm done with you. I'm done with this whole charade. You want to know what your problem is, Stephen? You've forgotten what it means to be human. You've forgotten that there are actual people on the other side of your insults. You sit up here in your little kingdom, surrounded by yes men and applause signs, and you've lost touch with reality." Colbert opened his mouth to respond, but Cage wasn't finished. He was on a roll now, years of frustration pouring out all at once. "You know what really gets me? You act like you're one of the good guys. You act like you're fighting for something meaningful, but all you do is punch down. You mock people's failures. You make fun of their struggles. That's not courage, Stephen. That's not standing up for anything. That's just being a bully with better lighting." The host's face was red now too, his composure cracking. "How dare you come on my show and call me a bully?" he spat. "You don't like the questions? Then maybe you should have stayed in whatever straight-to-streaming dungeon you crawled out of. Nobody forced you to be here." "You're right," Cage said, nodding slowly. "Nobody forced me. And that was my mistake. I actually thought you might have changed. I thought maybe after all these years, you'd learned how to have a real conversation. But you haven't changed at all. You're still the same smug, self-righteous jerk you've always been." Colbert stepped even closer, his finger pointing at Cage's chest. "Get out of my studio," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "If you can't handle a simple interview, then get the hell out." "Gladly," Cage shot back. "But before I go, I want everyone watching to know something. This man right here, this is not journalism. This is not entertainment. This is cruelty dressed up as comedy. And you all eat it up because it makes you feel superior. Well, I'm not playing this game anymore." The audience was absolutely silent. Some people looked shocked, others uncomfortable. A few were nodding in agreement with Cage. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the meltdown. Colbert tried to regain control of the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, Nicolas Cage, everyone," he announced sarcastically. "A true professional." But Cage wasn't done. He turned to face the audience directly, ignoring Colbert completely. "I've made mistakes in my career," he said, his voice calmer now but still intense. "I've made bad movies. I've made weird choices. But at least I've tried. At least I've put myself out there. This guy?" He pointed back at Colbert. "He takes no risks. He hides behind his desk and his writers, and tears down people who actually create things. That's not bravery. That's cowardice." Colbert's face was purple with rage. "Security!" he shouted. "Get him out of here, now!" 2 security guards appeared from the wings, looking extremely uncomfortable with the situation. They approached Cage cautiously, not wanting to physically touch him. Cage held up his hands. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm leaving. I wouldn't stay here another second if you paid me." He started walking toward the exit, but Colbert couldn't resist one final jab. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out," he called after him. "Just like your career hit you on the way down." Cage stopped dead in his tracks. He turned around slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but deadly serious. "You know what the difference between us is, Stephen. When people remember me, they'll remember the risks I took, the performances I gave, the art I tried to create. When they remember you, they'll remember you as the guy who was mean to his guests. That's your legacy. Think about that." The studio was completely silent. Even Colbert seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Cage shook his head in disgust and continued walking. As he reached the exit, he ripped off the microphone that was clipped to his jacket and tossed it on the floor. The sound of it hitting the ground echoed through the speakers. "Well," Colbert said, trying to recover, his voice shaky, "that was something. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of tonight's show." But his usual confidence was gone. He looked rattled, genuinely upset, and the audience could tell. Cage disappeared through the exit door, and it slammed shut behind him with a thunderous bang. The audience sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. Some people were already typing furiously on their phones, sharing what happened on social media. Others just stared at the stage in disbelief. Backstage, crew members scrambled to figure out what to do next. The show was only halfway through. There was no backup guest. Colbert sat at his desk, staring at nothing, while producers frantically spoke into his earpiece. The cameras cut to commercial, but the damage was done. This wasn't just another awkward celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a complete breakdown of the traditional talk show format. This was a guest standing up to a host and refusing to play along with the humiliation. And whether people agreed with Cage or thought he overreacted, everyone knew they had witnessed something historic. The clip would be everywhere by morning. The think pieces would be written. The debates would rage on social media. But in that moment, as the studio lights dimmed and the audience filed out in confused whispers, one thing was absolutely clear. Nicolas Cage had refused to be anyone's punching bag, and Stephen Colbert had finally pushed a guest too far.